Welcome back. All right, I want to talk a bit about Patrick Marleau. Patrick Marleau took his place in history. Took his place in history last night by passing Gordie Howe and taking the games played record for himself. Now, there are those who will say probably should have retired a couple years ago. You know what's interesting for me with professional athletes are there are certain athletes that get told your time is up, and so they'll want to play, and then we'll hear they retired like 2 years after their last game, and we say, oh, they didn't even know he was still active. There are players who still haven't retired technically who you might be surprised, and so yeah, we don't see that with Marleau. Now there was a point where San Jose was a little on the fence about whether or not to bring him back, right? And so I understand what people are saying, and yet at the same time, watching as much hockey as I can this year, San Jose, while they're a team that's below the playoff line, it's not because Marleau's in their roster. If anything, Marleau provides a nice steadying presence in that bottom six. He's playing 13 and a half minutes a game, so it's not like he's playing 9 minutes a game. Yeah, his ice time's down from where it used to be, but he's still got his ability to skate. He's still a good skater, and he's a good overall player. He was drafted number 2 by the Sharks in 1997. And I remember his rookie year being a little bit underwhelming, but he was 18 years of age. So he plays 74 games, 13 goals, 19 assists, 32 points. He was 6th in the Calder voting that year. And again, there was some discussion about maybe they should have left him in juniors. You know, his season wasn't necessarily all that great. So again, if you're looking at Lafreniere, who currently has 8 goals, and you're like, well, that guy's a bust. Yeah, in his first year, Marleau in 74 games had 13 goals. The amount of pressure put on kids is insane. So for Marleau, it was a gradual climb. And he did. He gradually climbed his way up. He became a point-of-game player. And the year after the lockout might have been his best overall season. 82 games, 34 goals, 52 assists, 86 points. He was 3rd in Lady Byng voting that year. It's the only year he's been a finalist for an award in the NHL. And, you know, awards will often be used when we're talking about Hall of Fame. I did Hall of Fame discussion not that long ago, who may or may not be in the Hall of Fame. And with Marleau, the fact he's played 1,768 games, that matters. It matters because nobody else in the history of the league has done it. 566 goals, that's 23rd on the all-time list. 630 assists is 80th on the all-time list. 1,196 points is 50th on the all-time list. And I understand, he's done that over more games than everybody else. But the numbers still tell you he'll at least get a look. When he's retired and they start talking about who does or doesn't belong in the Hall, he'll get a look. And not only that, he's clearly not wanting to retire this offseason either. Now, whether he does or he doesn't, we'll see. But there's sort of a Jaromir Jagr type vibe here where Marleau wants to play until they tell him he can't. And at this stage, that hasn't happened. 2010-2011, 82 games played, 37 goals, 36 assists, 73 points. He was a 4th-team All-Star. So this is at the end of the year, they have voting on who was the best at each position. And you have your center, left wing, right wing, defense, goaltender. That means that I believe he would have been voted as a center that year. He was number 4 on the voting. He was also 4th in Lady Byng. So he's been a prominent player on a team that's been seen as an underachiever. And I think that might be what ends up hurting his overall status with fans, is that he was playing with a San Jose team that was a contender often, just couldn't get over the hump. But he's played 1,596 games in San Jose. He's going to play 1,600 games in San Jose alone by the time this season's done, right? 522 goals, 588 assists, 1,110 points. Those are all San Jose records that likely will stay for a very long time. 1,110 points is a lot for one franchise. In Toronto, plays 164 games, 43 goals, 41 assists, 84 points. And the Toronto Maple Leafs were kind of upset to see him leave. The players weren't that happy to see him leave. And he was seen as a mentor that helped bring along guys like Marner and Matthews. So he has that mentorship role he can utilize, to the point where when they traded him to Carolina, Carolina tried to talk him into staying. Before Carolina bought out the rest of his contract and got a first round pick out of Toronto to make that happen, they wanted him to stick around. And he basically said, no, I want to play in California. So he gets bought out by them. He waits until San Jose is ready to sign him. And he goes back to San Jose. He was a hired gun for Pittsburgh last year. 8 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. But again, not there for the points. Not there as the goal scorer. So when people talk about him, they're like, well, he's washed up. He's no good. He is not the same player he was, but he is still useful. That's why Carolina tried to keep him. Toronto likely would have kept him. It was the salary cap. It was the contract that meant that he had to be moved. I don't think it was the player himself. And Pittsburgh, they end up out in the play-in round, but he ends up back in San Jose, which is where he belongs. He belongs in a San Jose jersey. 2016, the only time he's been to a Stanley Cup final, that's with the San Jose Sharks. 24 games played, that playoff, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. And that was the playoff where San Jose, it looked like we're finally over the hump. Because until then, there was this perception that if you have Marleau and Thornton, they're going to lose. They're going to lose. They're going to choke. It's the playoffs. It's what San Jose does. That was the year that they kind of overcame that. However, by losing in the final against the Pittsburgh Penguins, he doesn't get that ring. And it is one argument people will use against him. Well, he's never won anything. He got to the Stanley Cup final and they lost to a Pittsburgh team that was pretty darn good. His overall playoff numbers, 195 games played, 72 goals, 55 assists, 127 points. So it's not like he's exactly a slouch in playoff numbers either. And so while he won't get playoff numbers this year unless San Jose ends up going on a run, one thing that's very interesting with him, he's only got 527 penalty minutes in all those career regular season games. Played the most games ever, 527 penalty minutes. He keeps his nose clean. And this is a guy who played a lot of tough minutes for San Jose, and I'm guaranteeing he's taken as much hacking and slashing and trips and all this stuff that star players take on good teams. And he's not fighting back. He's not taking dumb penalties as a response. I don't want to say not fighting back. He's not taking dumb penalties because of that. And so I think that's impressive. He was in 3 All-Star games, 2004, 2007, 2009. 2009-2010 with 44 goals. He was 4th in the NHL in goals scored that year. 2010-2011 with 37 goals. He was 7th in goals scored that year in the NHL. So the numbers are there. The numbers are there that when we get to that Hall of Fame decision, I really think that game's played, which is not done yet. It's not like he said, all right, I've done this, now I'm going to retire. The other part that I find weird too is the idea that, well, he's hung on. He's hung on. He's not... I mean, I could do videos on guys who hung on too long. Because I know I've seen it. And again, with Marleau, I don't get that feeling. Yeah, if you look at his numbers this year, he's got 4 goals and 4 assists. I think it's in 43 games. Yeah, those numbers are low, comparatively speaking, with the rest of his career. But that's not the player he is anymore. The example I always use is Brian Trottier with the Penguins in the early 90s. He wasn't the Brian Trottier from the New York Islanders who was scoring all those goals and points and going out and doing all the Islanders stuff for 4 straight Stanley Cups. But he was a useful bottom 6 part for the Pittsburgh Penguins that helped them get over the hump and become a championship team. And Brian Trottier, his overall input and how he helped that team, you couldn't overstate it. You really couldn't. And really good teams that get over that hump, you will very often find that veteran player. And Marleau just hasn't been in that situation where he's been that guy who comes in and gets that team over the hump. And so we'll see if that ends up happening next season, because I get the feeling he's going to come back again. And one of the reasons I'm not doing this as a full career video is because I do get the feeling he's going to come back. And also, this isn't just about this is about that whole idea that, well, he shouldn't still be around kind of thing. I don't agree with that. 107 career game-winning goals makes him 7th on the all-time list for game winners. So there are stats you can pull here that say, you know what, he has put together a really, really solid career. And that argument in favor of Hall of Fame is still there. He was the Sharks captain from 03-04 through 2008-2009. Remember when he lost the captaincy? But you know what? The year after, he ended up putting up 44 goals. So it worked pretty well for him. Maybe he's happier as an alternate captain than as the captain of the team, right? So yeah, the numbers I don't know. I don't know where we see this end up when it comes to the Hall of Fame consideration, but congratulations to him on playing more games than everybody else. It's a record that may very well stand the test of time. Gordie Howe held this record for a very long time. And while it's possible that somebody else reaches that number at some stage, it'll take a while. And yeah, so kudos to Patrick Marleau. I just felt like today I should do a video discussing it and find out what all you fine people think regarding Patrick Marleau. Again, the idea that, well, he should have retired. Yeah, but somebody signed him. Like, that's... If a player is at a point where he should retire, those are the guys who don't get signed. And that is when it's kind of sad. When it's a year later, the guy goes, so I'm retiring because nobody signed me and now it's training camp again and my phone's not ringing now. So those are the guys I legit feel bad for. Marleau has not been that player as of yet. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, I will talk to you guys again soon.